My name is Phil Petty, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
Let's clear up the mess right now. I sobered up on April 23rd, 1962, so whatever years that figures out. I'm not too thrilled about that. I enjoy the fact that I've been sober a long time, but inferentially you have to age in the process, and I'm not exactly excited about that, you know. I mean, my sponsor loves to give it to me good and hard, and he was pointing out the other day that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, Roger Maris was in the process of hitting his 61 home runs. Jack Kennedy was president. We were not yet in Vietnam. We didn't have pop-top cans on beer. I nearly popped him one right there. But after all, do you have the feeling that your sponsor, don't respond to this if your sponsor's here, but do you have the feeling that your sponsor is not quite bright? I mean, really, that you probably should have waited a little longer before you picked somebody. You know, screened them a little more carefully, taken an application, something like that. I mean, I picked one about the same way everybody does. When I was about 3 months sober, I picked this nut that looked to me like he had good sobriety. He was the sort of person I wanted to be. At least I thought I did at that time. My sponsor has a great deal of love and understanding, and absolutely no sympathy for people like me, and that may have saved my life. He's the sort of person that I have a standard alcoholic's ability to tell a sad story. When I really get going, I can bring tears to the eyes of a statue. And I would get going on one of these sad stories for my sponsor when I was new. And right at that point where you ought to be bursting into tears, he would start to giggle. Or worse yet, he would smile and I would start to giggle. And it's very difficult for any con man to be in the presence of somebody who is seeing through him. And so he made me nervous from the very beginning. And yet it's funny, despite the fact that I kept looking for all these differences between he and I've never really been all that sure he understood what my problems were, and every year on my birthday in AA I get a get well card from him. When the chips are down, he's the first person I go talk to. He's the first one that I seem to look to for answers. Now, I didn't always feel that way about him. My sponsor has this devious quality in giving advice. I remember the first time or two I went to him, I used to go to him with questions that could be answered by a 10-year-old child, yes or no. I mean, you just nod your head. And I would lay one of these questions out to him, you know, very clearly and succinctly, expecting a yes or no answer, and he would tell me what happened to him 12 years earlier in Milwaukee. And I began to wonder if really we had an acoustic problem in the room. Then I'd go to somebody else in my home group, Ann remembers that crowd, and I'd tell him the same thing, wanting a yes or no answer, and he'd tell me what happened to him 9 years ago in Jacksonville, Florida. And 3 or 4 other people would come up with the same answer. What they were doing, in effect, was telling me that the answer comes from the same place the question does. And the questions that I was asking were invariably ways of getting around doing things in the program that were uncomfortable for me, and they wouldn't let me off the hook. And I've been very grateful for them ever since. My sponsor at the present time is in the hospital, and he's going to be undergoing some surgery in the next week, and I've been going down there to see him with some regularity. And I was a little worried about him earlier this week because he was behaving well, and that's uncharacteristic of him. But I'm delighted to report that I went over yesterday and the nurses were infuriated with him, so I assume that he is back in the very pink of health and will be out of there in no time at all. But Ann is an old friend of his as well, and I'll keep you posted on what he does to the staff before he gets out. I've got a good job. I'm one of the public address announcers for the Dodgers and the Angels in the summertime, and I've just started my 20th season there. Is it 21? 20th. And we are back at it again, and it's a fun job. I've worked a couple of Dodger games and Angel games so far this year, and I enjoy that. When I started working for the Angels, one of the reasons I like this job is the Angels were the first people that I ever told as an employer that I belonged to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had all the misgivings that everybody does. You know, all the newcomers in here tonight, I'm sure, if they have a job or if they're looking for one, are secretly thinking, oh my God, if they find out, you know, I'm gone. And the Angels offered me this part-time job in 1965, and I told them that I belonged to Alcoholics Anonymous at the time that they offered it to me. I figured they had a right to know. And I thought their response was fairly typical. So what? One guy in the front office did ask, he said, does this mean that you won't show up very regularly? And I said, no, it means that I will. And in the last 20 years, I think I'm about their only part-timer who's never missed a day when he was supposed to be there. But I thought it was interesting. When I started with the Angels 20 years ago, we had virtually nobody in the press box who belonged to AA. Now I am delighted to report that we have a substantial minority, and if you read the sport pages at all, you are already aware that we are beginning to make significant inroads down on the field. I can assure you that the time will come when we are going to take over in professional sports. There are any number of people working as hard as they can work just to qualify for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous without the faintest idea that that's what they're doing at the present time. But it's an enjoyable job, and I like it. And I've told this story before, but I'll mention it for the new people. Whenever I work a game at Dodger Stadium, there's a sports writer who is now semi-retired who occasionally works for one of the wire services. And if he and I work the same night, being members of AA together, we try to have dinner in the Press Box restaurant. And we are treated royally when we go in there to eat. I have never been given that kind of service in any restaurant in the world. I guess Joe and I are treated better in that restaurant than the owner of the Dodgers is. And there's a logical reason for that. The owner of the Dodgers does not belong to Alcoholics Anonymous. But the press box waiter does. And when business is slow, Cato comes over, he's the waiter, and he sits down with Joe and I. And we all talk about the meetings we've been to and the speakers we've heard and the things we've been doing in here. And it's a lot of fun. We talk a little louder than we absolutely have to because with the exception of a drunk tank, I don't know of any place I've ever seen that has more potential newcomers to the acre than a press box does. And as I say, we are making significant inroads at the present time. And I have no doubt that it will only get better as time goes on. I invariably, when my birthday comes up, have occasion when I stop and think about what has gone on in my life and what is in the process of occurring. And I don't know about you, but I really wish that I felt more secure or proud of the amount of sobriety that I have than I honestly do. I hate to tell you this, but I might as well blurt it right out. I have never had a single day in Alcoholics Anonymous when I felt that I deserved to stay sober. All I've ever done is as much as I could do, and God has always had to make up some sort of difference. I've never been able to feel terribly proud about the amount of time that I have here because I didn't really select the day I came in. I didn't sit down to enjoy any pension benefits in here. It was just one of those timing accidents that occur in each of our lives and in a manner that is as mysterious to us after it has occurred by a number of years as it was when it occurred. All I know is that 30 days before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, if Bill Wilson himself had invited me in with a lifetime pass, engraved on gold, I would have thrown him out of the house. And on the day that I came here, any of you or anybody else in Alcoholics Anonymous could have brought me. And I don't know why. The whole process is faintly mysterious to me. All I know is that on that particular day, at that particular time, I was willing to come here and to see what you were and who you were and what you had to say. And I was not terribly receptive. Now, I don't know about you, but my first reaction to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous were that I thought it was about the biggest joke I had ever seen. I didn't tell you that, but I looked at that and I thought if you tried to live by these 12 simple steps, you would be at the mercy of every door-to-door book salesman and used car dealer in the world. They might just as well tattoo the word trick right across your forehead. That there was no way that you were going to be able to... get along out there in the kind of world I had been living in if you tried to live that way. And I had a good reason for thinking that. Like every other newcomer, I was faced for the first time in my life with a program based upon rigorous honesty. And like every other newcomer, I had no prior exposure to that virtue, so I had no reason to know whether it would work or not. And like everybody else, I was stunned when I got here and realized that, my God, it will work for me too. And that honesty is the only thing we need to go out there and not merely get along, but to prevail. And that was something I didn't know and had to learn the hard way, as I guess many of us do in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have recently had occasion to think back about some of the other things that I learned early on in AA. I don't know about you, but I have found that my character defects, as I work this program, do not mysteriously disappear once and for all. That they are, at best, lurking in the background most of the time, and as long as I try to work this program one day at a time, they stay down in manageable proportions. But if I get a little sloppy, they tend to seep back in. I am extremely good at being one of the world's great self-pity experts. I have established that virtue in my own life with great care over a long period of time. When I'm working best in the program, the self-pitying part of my life recedes nicely, thank you, and I get along very well. But I go through periods occasionally where I slough off, and the self-pity comes back. If you think that you're not subject to this, I envy you, but let me suggest a simple test sometime to see whether or not you might not have the same problem as I. Take a night off. Spend it in a comfortable, easy chair, and spend the entire evening thinking about nothing but your own well-being. If there are any doctors here tonight, they will back me up when I tell you that if you are normal and you do that, within 30 minutes of the time you sit down and start thinking about your own body, you will experience a tenth of a second twinge of pain in one or more areas of your body where you have never experienced pain before. It's normal. It can be a nerve end discharge. It can be any one of a dozen things. It's asymptomatic. But if you're like me and you experience one of those tenth of a second twinges, you will immediately concentrate on it for the next 2 hours and come to the only possible conclusion. You are dying of cancer. Then you spend the rest of the night sleeplessly thinking about all of those other things. How can I triple my insurance without letting anybody know? What will my home group do without me? The following morning, if you're like me, you've been sober for a while, you've probably got a fairly good relationship with a doctor, you go see him. And he'll take you right in. And he becomes concerned because you've never told him about a pain in that area of your body before. And he very likely will run you through a very sophisticated series of diagnostic tests. And he will call you back in as soon as he gets the results. And with that look of absolute confidence that only the American Medical Association seems to muster up, he will announce that he has seen your results and that you are as sound as the day you were born. You will come to the only possible conclusion upon hearing this guy is a quack. Or he is so busy trying to make money that he hasn't paid enough attention to my results. When that happens, the best thing in the world to have is a newcomer come along. Any old newcomer will do. Somebody that you can take to meetings and introduce to people who have something in common with him and get him going. And of course, the minute you do that and show up in meetings, people will say, will you speak here or make the coffee there or go to this hospital or that institution? And all of a sudden, you've got something to do involving the program every night again, and life gets good again. I mean like it only really gets in here. And if you're like me, about a year and a half later, it'll suddenly occur to you, I'm spending an awful lot of time going to meetings. Maybe I ought to take a night off. And you do. And sure enough, within the first 30 minutes, you get a tenth of a second twinge in that same area. Only this time you realize, my God, it's only the second time I've had it in a year and a half. The doctor must have been right after all. The point I'm trying to make is that most of the problems that I create for myself, having been sober for a while, evolved from character defects that I brought to you 23 years ago, which have become manageable during the time I have been working the program, but which, if I start to slough off or slide back or take shortcuts, can seep through the cracks and come right back in the way they used to be. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why we need to continue to stay close to Alcoholics Anonymous, to go to meetings, to establish a group of people with whom you can talk about things that are important and meaningful to you. I don't know about you, but I have a small group of people. My sponsor leads the pack, but there are others whom I have always felt that I could rely upon for help when occasionally the anxieties came back, or you tended to get depressed, or something bothered you. Some of these people don't even know they're on my own personal steering committee, but they are there. And I wouldn't be without that kind of personal support. And I don't know how you can get that unless you go to meetings and stay in touch with the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been concerned of late. Is it possible to get a glass of water? I have been concerned of late with people who occasionally come to meetings in the early days or early years and suddenly disappear. Some of whom go back out into the bars, and some of whom don't, but tend to go back out into left field emotionally. Neither would be very desirable in my view. And the people that I know who stay sober over long periods of time and who are happy and seem to be getting the most out of life invariably are the ones who stay close in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's one of the reasons, I suppose, why when a newcomer asks me, how many meetings do I have to go to? The only answer I can give you is, how soon would you like to be happy? Or how thoroughly do I have to commit myself to this program? How soon would you like to become your own best friend instead of your own worst enemy? I don't think that any of us can divest ourselves from our membership, can pull back, if you will, and stay away from the people who are practicing this program. And I'm extremely grateful that I came into Alcoholics Anonymous with people like my sponsor and others available who told me early on that you had to be here. It isn't enough to read, it isn't enough to listen at a distance, you got to be here, you got to take part. That this is a program where indeed your participation is absolutely vital the longer you're here. My sponsor has been sober for 38 years now, and he may occasionally miss a meeting. In a week's time, he will generally go at least once a week. Hey, thank you very much. But never much more than that. And I think he's living proof of the fact that for people like me, I need to see you. I need the help. I have never been one who has been able to accept help only from people who are sober longer than I have. I'll take help from a newcomer. I have no compulsion about that at all. I'll take help from alcoholic and non-alcoholic alike. I will take help from the 50%er or the slipper or anybody in between. In short, when you're as ill as I am when you walk in here, you will take help from anybody who offers it at any point in time. And that's equally true, I think, now, or perhaps more true now than it was when I came in here. One of the reasons that I come to meetings is the source of help that I get from the members of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was given an incredibly simplistic view of this program when I came here, which was simply that everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous who is staying sober today is helping me personally, whether he knows it or not. And I believe that. If you are doing whatever you need to do to stay sober just today alone, you are automatically helping me. I have never understood people who get up in this program and say, well, if you want to go out and slip, go right ahead, come on back when you can, you'll be a terrible example, but you won't bother me. Like hell you won't. I want you to stay here. You're not going to do me any good out there. I want you to stay here for what you can teach me, for what you can be to me, for what you can show me in your own life. I cannot define it any closer than that. But it's very important to me that you stay sober, that we stay sober together. And that's something I didn't know when I came here. Occasionally you hear people say things that you've heard 1,000 times before, but they cause you to rethink your views toward Alcoholics Anonymous. That was just one of them. Another one I've never understood. This is a selfish program. I've never believed that. I don't believe it now. I think it's a selfless program that can only be practiced well by compulsively selfish people. I don't see anything selfish about Alcoholics Anonymous. It says go out, clean up your own past, and then try to help everybody you can who has your problem. That's selfish? I think that's as close to being selfless as you'll ever get. The thing that makes it unique for you and I is that in order to accomplish the goals of Alcoholics Anonymous, you must be compulsively selfish yourself. I am every bit as selfish as I was 23 years ago this week when they wheeled me in here. But I'm selfish about different things. I am selfish about the ability to live comfortably one day at a time with a certain simple attitude that is described in chapters 2 and 3 of this book. And if in order to maintain that, I have to occasionally get up in the middle of the night and go out and make a 12-step call on somebody who does not respond, I will gladly do it. If in order to maintain that I come up and speak at one group or do something else at another, I'll happily do it. But I'm not really doing it for selfless reasons. I have not turned into Mother Teresa. I have not become anyone who is in the least bit trying to save the world. I'm as selfish as I ever was, but I'm selfish now because of what you have given me in the way of a life of freedom and enjoyment. And so if I do these things and the outside world thinks that because I will drive halfway across the county to let some drunk throw up on me at 3 a.m. that I am selfless, I don't care. But you and I know. And I think that's important to distinguish. I've been thinking about a number of random things that invariably come up along the time of your birthday. And most of them lead me to conclude that I haven't made a lot of progress. I don't have a great deal of spiritual depth. I am alarmed at how little I have. I suppose the big reason for my being here and sober in God's eyes is that once in a while he has to show us that anybody can do it. And I have the strange feeling I'm it. I don't meditate well. I have friends who meditate splendidly. I have a friend in Laguna Beach who meditates so deeply that he can affect his pulse rate and blood pressure by his meditation. I think that's wonderful. When I meditate for more than about 2 minutes, I tend to snore. I do not pray one-on-one in English with the God of my understanding and expect him to respond to me in that language. I'm one of those nuts who seems to pray better on the dead run than I do on bended knee. I am beautiful at recognizing God's will about 1.5 years to the day after it has occurred. And if I had to give you my view of my relationship to God, it would be that I do what I think he wants me to do, and if I am correct, it will work out. And if it starts to hurt, I have learned to stop and say, hey, I've made a mistake, let's try it some way other than that. I have no other intimate, close, personal relationship that leads me to believe that God thinks any more of me than he does of you. I am convinced, incidentally, that he loves us all to desperation. But if I felt that I had any special relationship that neither you nor anyone else enjoyed, I would drown trying to walk to Catalina to show you my special relationship. I guess if I have nothing else to offer you in the spiritual realm than these observations, I have at least proven that if I can stay sober with no more depth than I have, you ought to be an absolute cinch if you're new or relatively new. And that's something I think is important. I think back on a lot of my failings and my faults as I approach birthdays. I don't do it to go through any sort of flagellation. I have the same sort of ego that most people have in this program. I had so much ego when I came here that I used to think that I didn't have any. You know, that's one of the purer forms of egotism. I really did. I thought, I can't be egotistical because I hate myself. And then I read in the paper one night, in a marvelous column by Sidney J. Harris, that an egotist is not one who thinks well of himself, but one who thinks constantly of himself. That's me, bingo. And I have disabused myself of any feelings of modesty in that score ever since. I have trouble recognizing events in my own life when they occur in proper perspective. I have mentioned this before to some of you. But invariably, in the 23 years I have been sober, virtually every good thing in my life, beginning with getting married, has come about directly or indirectly because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And yet, virtually every good thing that has happened to me has, when I first saw it on the horizon, looked like a thundercloud, a terrible disaster in the offing. I mean, I have been beset by a series of horrors that you just wouldn't believe. To wit, when I came to the program, I came to you in a relatively pure state. I had very little in the way of the world's goods. I had the clothes on my back, I had 4 cents in cash, I had almost a full pack of cigarettes, which I no longer use, and I had a car that wouldn't run, and that was it. I lived in a recovery house, a 12-step type house in Long Beach on credit for 2 months because I had no money, and I got a job in a department store. And finally got enough to find a place, and I hated that job. The first year I was on the program, I literally spent the time in a job that I really couldn't stand and didn't pay very much, but at least it didn't interfere with my going to meetings 8 to 10 times a week, which I customarily did. When I was about a year on the program, a friend of mine in Al-Anon advised me that she worked for an aerospace company where they were hiring anybody who came in, and she knew I hated my job. I didn't realize what a slam that was when she said they were hiring anybody until I thought about it. But at least here was an opportunity to get away from night work and weekend work and to get a better job in a more prestigious industry and all kinds of good things to happen. I was terrified when I found out about this. Because if you're my kind of drunk and my kind of egotist, you must look at all of the negative factors and everything. Why, I don't know, but you do. When she told me about this wonderful opportunity, I had to think about what a disaster in the offing it would be, for example, if I went out there and they hired me and I quit the old job, which I hate but I can do, and didn't survive the probationary period on the new job. I would starve to death. I'd be out of work entirely. When the pain of not doing anything became too great, I went out there and I applied, and she was right. They were hiring anybody, and I got on. And it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. I stayed there for 7 years. I liked it so well. It was a large multinational corporation, primarily in the aerospace industry, and I had a tremendous advantage in there. I had already been in the Navy, so I knew how to look busy without really doing anything. And that's a tremendous advantage, as I say, in any big corporation. When I was about 3 years sober, I decided to go back to school. I had the schooling available. I had the money to go. My wife and my friends were supportive. I had everything going in my favor. And when it came right down to enrolling, I became terrified at the prospect of doing it because of the fact that in my own mind I had a scenario worked out. Well, what happens if I go to school and I flunk out? My home group will laugh at me. My home group is like your home group. They couldn't care less. Most of the people in my home group, I don't know what they do for a living. I don't know whether they're going to school or not. I don't know the horsepower of their car or the size of their wallets, and I don't give a damn. There are people that I have known for the entire 23 years that I have lived in this program whose last names I have never learned, and I see them regularly. If I lost everything that I own between now and next Friday night when my home group meets again, what would the reaction be if my home group is the same as yours? It's predictable. Nothing. Nobody would give a damn, really. Except for one or two in the back of the room who would secretly become envious because now my story would be better. But for the most part, they couldn't care less. Well, I went back to school, and I was terrified of a number of things, not the least of which was flunking out, and I decided I would go back to school the way that you had now taught me to live, one day at a time. I had never been all that much of a scholar, but then again, I'd never gone to school one day at a time either. And so I did. I didn't worry about the end of the curriculum. I didn't worry about the end of the 4-year program. All I worried about was today's lesson today. And much to the shock of my wife and my sponsor and my friends, I not only graduated, but I did rather well. And I qualified for the California bar examination. I had gone back to law school. Most people, I suppose, who are normal or something close to that would be tickled to death to qualify for the bar exam. I was terrified. It was a no-win situation. If I went up there and flunked, everybody would say he's dumb. He spent 4 years and hasn't learned anything. If I went up and passed, I would immediately go out into practice and starve to death. I mean, there's no way of getting ahead. When the pain of inactivity became too great, I went up, I took the exam, I passed, and I didn't starve. At the time I went into practice, there were about 1/5 the number of lawyers there are now, and there was a lot of business out there, and things got very good for me. And I learned something else. When my finances changed radically for the better, I found out that I became just as anxious and nervous about that as I would have been if they'd gone bad. And I discovered, in my life at least, that any change creates anxiety, and it doesn't matter what the direction of the change is. If I inherited all of Howard Hughes' estate or lost all of my own, the anxiety would be identical. The direction is immaterial. It is the fact of change. Even bad habits become comfortable. Even bad situations, I think, once you adapt to them, create a certain degree of calm that when they are rectified or changed or altered, leaves in place of it an anxiety that I have noted in my own life at least. I went into practice in Orange County after I had gone through the bar exam, and things were rather good for me there. I was in with a fairly prosperous law firm, and I enjoyed it, and I was in practice for a number of years. And then one of my partners got sick. And at about that time, one of the municipal courts decided that they would hire a trial commissioner. A trial commissioner in California does essentially the same thing that a judge does. And in a fit of megalomania, I decided I would apply. And I did. And when I applied, I told them that you and I had been keeping company for a number of years. And I was invited out about a month later for an interview by the screening committee that was going to make the ultimate selection. They were going to appoint a commissioner from the court. And they talked about a lot of things, none of which involved Alcoholics Anonymous. And I figured, I know why. They think it will embarrass me. And they've already decided to pick one of their buddies back there, and they don't want to, cause me any discomfort. And so I assumed that I was out. About a week later, I get called to come back again. And this time they talked extensively about Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery and alcohol and drug problems. And in December of 1975, my God, that's been 10 years ago, they called me and said that I had the job, and I was appointed to that position. I later found out that one of the reasons that I beat out the guy who ran second was that they felt I had a better knowledge of alcohol and drug problems and recovery, and that a lot of our calendar is involved with just that. I point that out because if you be new or relatively new, and if you are worried about whether or not AA membership could be a negative factor in your employment history, wait until it turns out that way before you worry about it. Every time it surfaced in my life, it surfaced in a very positive fashion. So I took that job, and I liked it. I could have done it for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I have a sketchy employment history. I lasted about a year. And the governor removed me from that job by making me a municipal court judge in the North Orange County Judicial District, which my sponsor thought was hilarious because it included Disneyland, which he felt I should have been in years before. And there I enjoyed the fact that in the municipal court you're dealing one-on-one with people with alcohol problems, and you can do things to be helpful. And occasionally a little bit innovative and try to address the problem. And you're dealing with people who, for the most part, are in a position in life where they still can do something about it. I like that job. I could have done that for the rest of my life. I lasted not quite 5 years. And then they elevated me to the Superior Court in Orange County, and I've been there now for a little over 4. I don't deal with alcoholics in quite the same manner that I used to, and I do miss that, although I enjoy the work in other areas very much. Last year I had an interesting assignment. For 2 months they assigned me to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, where I was working on that court temporarily as one of the justices there, and I liked that. I'm bringing this up for a rather bizarre reason if you be new. I want to warn you if you are a newcomer. Be extremely careful about what you pray for. God has a marvelous sense of humor, and he may give it to you. I'm one of those nuts who firmly believes that none of us should be allowed to designate what our future fringe benefits are going to be, because each of us would shortchange ourselves in the process. I know Jim and some of the other people here, and Ann and Co., and some of them I've come to know over the years, would be the first to say that if you had given us any indication when we were new of all the good things that were going to happen to us, we would have been completely incredulous about it. I had no idea my life was going in any particular direction when I came here. I had no idea it was going to continue, much less go in any direction. And I think that if you be new or relatively new, the one thing you can safely rely upon is that the fringe benefits in Alcoholics Anonymous will far exceed your expectations and probably lead you into areas where you have never been. I don't know what you are equipped to do as a newcomer. Probably you don't right now. If I had to try to find out quick and dirty what you may be doing in the future if you stay sober and allow this program to free up the talents and abilities that God has given you, the best way to do that would be to ask you deep down inside what you'd most like to do or be. And you probably wouldn't tell me. But that, I think, may be a preliminary indication of what God has in mind for you if you will allow him to work through Alcoholics Anonymous. I really believe that Alcoholics Anonymous gives you and I only one thing: the ability to free up our talents, if you will, and to earn whatever it is that we can. You and I, each of us, have a certain combination of talents that's unique and individual to us. It's not the same for any two people. There is something that God has put together in you that is unique, and that if you allow it to go, if you allow it, if you will, to be freed and to work to fruition, makes you a very unique and unusual person in our society. And I believe that Alcoholics Anonymous enables you to free up that talent, those abilities, whatever they are. I've told this story a lot of times. It illustrates the point, I think. I have a friend in Long Beach who is an ugly Irishman. There's just no other way to put it. He's not terribly good looking. He will never be confused with Robert Redford. He was a terribly unsuccessful beer bar owner. Came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, he owned a beer bar in a good section of town and still went bankrupt. And came to Alcoholics Anonymous and sobered up. And all of his life, this guy had wanted to be an actor. Nobody is ever going to cast him in any role that Paul Newman has just turned down. I mean, he's not that type. There aren't very many roles, however, for people who look like Paul Newman. And there are an awful lot of movie roles for people who look like ugly Irishmen. I mean, there are bailiffs and police officers and bartenders and all kinds of things. And this guy has made a very nice living as an actor. Over the years, something he's always wanted to do because he sobered up and tried to do what it was deep down inside that he felt he would most enjoy. And I recall a number of years ago watching the Super Bowl and seeing this ugly Irish bartender come on in a Coors commercial extolling the virtues of Coors Light beer with a pop-top can that didn't even exist when he quit drinking, because I know when he quit. And I think that sort of thing can be realized in all of our lives. You and I can find out what it is. Maybe you are the best carpenter in the Santa Ynez Valley. I don't know. Maybe you are the best judge that may come out of this area. You might be the best cobbler or the best brain surgeon. It doesn't matter what you are, but it matters very much that you be the best at it. And God has given you that combination of talents if you will free it up. If you will allow this program to enable you to use whatever it is that's been given to you. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that to be infinitely more intoxicating than anything that I drank in order to get here. But then again, if I might take a few moments to talk about some of the things that are important to me in Alcoholics Anonymous and some of the opinions I have, there is a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous which is infinitely more intoxicating than the substances that we used in order to qualify for membership in it. I am convinced, for example, that Alcoholics Anonymous has within it a source of power that is unique, that is unlike anything I have ever seen anywhere. If you want just a glimpse of that, I would suggest that you go to the best psychiatrist you can find and ask him what kind of luck he is having in dealing with compulsive behavior patterns like alcoholics. If he's really good, top drawer, he's helping 3 to 5%. For the last 50 years, you and I have seen in Alcoholics Anonymous that this program is helping 75% of the people who come here. That is raw power. Put any label on it you'd like, it's here. And it comes into being in your life and mine the minute we start to work these 12 deceptively simple steps. Why, I don't know, but it does. The fact is that as you and I begin to work these steps, that source of power comes into being in ways that we immediately can recognize. I don't know about you, but I noticed it first. When I came in here, I tried to work these steps even haltingly, and one day at a time, it was no longer necessary for me to drink. But as I began to work this program, you also began to pound on me with that phrase again and again that I was not entitled to use this as a diet, but I am required to practice these principles in all of my affairs. And so this same source of power that has enabled me to live comfortably without alcohol for the last 23 years became available in every other area of my life where I would practice these principles. And indeed, it's true for all of us that as we begin to expand the use of this program, this source of power enables us to become better in our professional, personal, social relationships in any area where we use it. I don't know about you, but I find that to be intoxicating indeed. The fact that you and I can tap right now a source of power that can change our lives. You have already given me anything that I need in order to change any part of my life that is unsatisfactory, unhappy, or unfulfilling right now. I have the tools within me, and so do you, and they've been given to us by this program. If I'm not happy, if I'm not satisfied with the way my life is going, I can change it by changing my thinking about it. And I do that by beginning to change tonight. What I am now is in large part what I have been thinking about up to this point in my life. What I am going to be from this point forward will be determined by what I think about from this point forward. And I didn't know that until I came here. But as you and I come into this program and begin to alter our thinking to adapt to these principles, that source of power begins to change our lives. And so if I'm not happy, if I'm not satisfied, I can never again look to you or anybody else or any past circumstance and say, the reason that things aren't going well for me is out there. Like hell it is. If I'm unhappy, the reason is in here. And you've given me the tools to change it. Never again do I have to accept second best in my own life unless I choose to. Never again do you have to go second class unless you enjoy it. That's something I never knew until I got here. This source of power, I think, becomes more readily available the longer we are here, but it is never more dramatic than it is in the very beginning stages as you begin to work this program. One of the nice things about Alcoholics Anonymous is you do not have to believe in it for it to work. Most of us come in here skeptically. If there be anybody here who is new or relatively new tonight who doesn't really believe this is anything other than some sort of secret psalm-singing organization, he's exactly the way I was. I wasn't buying any of this. I thought you were the biggest bunch of tricks I'd ever seen. One of the joys, I think, of Alcoholics Anonymous lies in the fact that you come in here and you go through the motions, so to speak, thinking that you're conning everybody until, my God, at some point in that first year you suddenly realize, hey, this thing is working for me. Even though I don't believe in it, it is doing it, you know. And you go from that position of being a quiet scoffer to a position of having absolute faith in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it will happen, as it does to all of us. And so if you be new or relatively new, and if you think this is an outdoor loony bin of some type, keep coming back. We'll be happy to have you come just as often as you can. And I guarantee you that if you do, by whatever process of spiritual osmosis we employ, the same change will come in your life as came in ours. And that seems to happen with alarming frequency. I am absolutely convinced that as you and I come into this program and begin to work it to the best of whatever ability we have, we also find out that we can go anywhere we want to go, do anything we want to do, and become any kind of people we choose to become. There are no limits on what you and I can do with this program except for the limits we place upon ourselves. And so you can take your life and run with it. You can turn it into everything you've ever wanted it to be, and you can do it beginning tonight. And that's something I never knew till I got here. One of the joys, I think, of being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous is that not only do you hear people talk about this, but you will see it lived out in the lives of the people around you in every meeting you go to. And one of the reasons I go to meetings is that I want to see the promises of Alcoholics Anonymous coming to fruition in the lives of the people around me. And so I encourage you to go to meetings often and to watch and to observe and to take part in the lives of the people in your home group, because there is a feeling of closeness that comes no other way, and it's something that becomes more and more valuable as time goes on. One of the reasons I go to meetings in addition to that is that I find that the alcoholics that I know are infinitely more exciting to me than anybody else that I associate with. There's a certain excitement to being around people who live in the present, who are not shattered by the past, who are not terrified of the future, who know that God has given us only this moment to enjoy, and that we don't need to have a single thing added to our lives in order to be happy right up until bedtime tonight, if we choose to, and we have the choice. That in itself is a source of considerable power, I think. There's a certain joy to being around people who live in the present and for the present, people who know that when you come into Alcoholics Anonymous, you may absolutely rely upon the fact that the best day of your life has not yet been lived, and that every day you stay sober, it gets one day closer. And I suppose there's a certain delicious irony in being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and going to a lot of meetings as you look back upon your views of AA when you came in here. I don't know what you thought about Alcoholics Anonymous when you came in, but I told you a little about what I did. I really thought you were terrific, about 3 levels below Skid Row. I mean, there is no further you can drop, guys. And I'm not really convinced that my view of Alcoholics Anonymous was so different from anybody else's. I'll never forget, I was listening to a guy from Pasadena one night when I was new, and he read a letter that I later got a copy of that describes exactly how I felt about Alcoholics Anonymous. It was one of those advice to the lovelorn things. And it read, "Dear Abigail Van Buren, I have one brother who has been executed for murder, another who is doing life for rape, and a third who is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. My father sells dope to high school kids, and my mother makes bathtub gin. Recently, I met a girl who has just been released from prison where she served time for smothering her illegitimate child, and I want to marry her. My question is, should I tell her about my brother who's on AA?" That was just about the way I felt about you. I thought you were at the very bottom of the poll. And one of the joys of staying sober for a period of time and looking back on your life comes in the realization that we all come in here with a terribly deflated view of alcoholics, alcoholism, Alcoholics Anonymous, and ourselves. And as we come in here and learn a little bit about each of those 4 topics, we suddenly realize, after we've been here for a little while, that if the richest man in the world were to use all of the resources at his command to deal with an alcoholic problem of his own, he would be here too. He would have found that this is the world's best, most efficient, most effective way of dealing with a drinking problem. And we would have charged him the same thing they charged you and me. We would give it away on condition that he pass it along to the next drunk in line. Thank you.